most widely used. Um, so population projection is, so I will just repeat it for, because I just heard the no, the signal. Okay, that this method of the simplest and most widely used in estimating future population, especially in areas with slow or steady growth. It assumes a constant increase in population over time, meaning no compounding, just straightforward addition. And the formula is P PO plus N equals PO plus MN, where PO plus N is the projected population at a future year, means the base year plus N. Kapag magsa-solve tayo ng problems in this, sasabihin naman niya yung base year, like for example 1995, and then if it asks you to project for the next 5 years, and so you have to add that 5 years. And so PO is the population of the base year, and M is the average increase per time unit, and N is the number of years from the base year. So in the example shown, the population increases by 10,000. Did you notice that? Okay, 10,000 every 10 years, which means M equals 1,000 per year. And if you're projecting from 1951 to 1991, N equals 40. So the population is, kasi PO is the base year, so it's P 1991. Okay, P 1991 equals, I mean, yun pala yung ipo-project mo, sorry. P 1991, so yun yung problem. Equals 100,000 plus 1,000 times 40 equals 140,000. So, kahit by inspection, you can already answer that, but just to make sure we're using the formula. And this method is especially useful for barangays or municipalities without explosive growth, and where data shows a linear trend. Okay, and that's why meron siyang you use the appropriate methodology if it's not really complex, and when it shows a linear trend. So it's also easy to apply and communicate in local planning discussions. So here is the geometric method, which builds on the idea of compounded growth. Sa kanina, we don't talk about compound variables. So we build on the idea of compounded growth, unlike the arithmetic, okay, method where growth is added uniformly. This method assumes that the population grows at a fixed percentage rate over time, meaning each year's growth is based on the previous year's population. And the formula is PT, okay, equals PO times 1 plus R raised to the T, where PT is the projected population at time T, and PO is the population at the base year, and R is the growth rate expressed as a decimal. For example, if it's 2%, of course, 0.02, ganun. So T is the number of years since the base year. So to solve for the rate R, when you have data for 2 time points, you use R equals ln, okay, the ln there, ln times PT over PO over T, okay? And this method assumes exponential growth, meaning the increase itself increases over time. This produces a curved trend upward, as shown in the graph, and it's most applicable to rapidly growing areas like suburban communities or urban fringes where migration and birth rates are both high. So what are the advantages using this? It still keeps the assumption of a constant growth rate, making it easy to compute with a scientific calculator kapag i-require tayo. No? So we'll wait for the instruction of PRB of environmental planning whether or not you will be allowed to use calculator. Pag sinabi na lang hindi, it means that you don't really need that. Okay? But of course, in practice, we use Excel or other applications. So it's better suited than arithmetic for, dynamic and fast-growing areas. Okay. So what are the limitations of this method? Number one, it does not recognize environmental or physical limits to growth. It can overestimate if growth slows due to economic saturation or policy restrictions. So, okay. Now for it is an example here. Okay. So do you see the example there that there are 2 points, right? P 1995, okay, and 2000. So okay. Then we're interested in finding the annual growth rate R. And then using that to project the population for the year 2010. So we solve for the growth rate and we use the formula R equals loan times PT over PO over T. Here, PT equals 76,000. Ayan, ayan. 498, 735, 2010 yan, ano? And then 68. So applying the formula, we get 2 point, okay, just a moment. We get R as 0.0217. Okay, maaba yung formula, no? But we need to memorize that R equals loan times PT over PO all over T. We need to memorize that. Otherwise you can derive, but of course, wala tayo dun sa, I don't know, derivation. Yeah, if we have luxury of time, then we can do that. And so when we now project from year 2000 to 2010, which is 10 years. So P's of 2010 equals 76,498,735 times 1 plus 0.217. Okay, raised to the 10. Kasi 10 years yun eh. And then you get 94,817,431. So what's the interpretation here? That based on a constant geometric growth rate of 2.17%, the population would grow from 76.5 million in 2000 to roughly 94.8 million in 2010. Okay? Yan, na ano mo, 94 plus or 0.8. So this method is widely used in planning projections because it assumes self-reinforcing rate of growth are reflective of the real-world population behavior in urbanizing areas. However, it must be tempered with caution. It does not consider saturation points or resource limitations or policy interventions that might slow down growth in the future. So, walang consideration doon. And so, in summary, geometric projections are best used for medium range forecasting where growth is consistent and not constrained by hard capacity limits, which is often the case in early stages of urban expansion. So here, the third one is exponential method. This method projects accelerating growth faster than the geometric method. It's often referred to as Malthusian growth, named after Thomas Malthus. He theorized that population grow exponentially while resources grow linearly. And as such, it suggests growth without bounds, which is not typical of real-world populations over the long term. And so it has a formula, PT equals POE raised to the RT, where PT is the projection population at time T, PO is the base population, E is the Euler's number approximately. Di ba? Alam mo yun, yung E, 2.7, di ba? I mentioned, I advised you to memorize. Baka nakalimutan na ninyo. But nung bata tayo, we know that E equals 2.71828. Pero pag may calculator, you can press E doon. And then R is the rate of growth, and T is the number of years between the base year and the projection year. Alternatively, if you're solving for R, you can rearrange the formula, or you can derive that R equals log times PT over PO all over T log E. So, yan. Nung araw, I'm, I can, I memorize like Fernando Po, parang ganun. Po. Po raised to RT. So, para hindi ko lang makalimutan yung exponential method. So what's the use of this? The exponential method is theoretically elegant, but in practice, it's rarely realistic for long-term planning. It assumes that population growth is not just consistent, but compounding continuously, implying there's no limit to environmental capacity, land availability, or social constraints. And that's why this one, you can see there that it's often used wrongly. Nakita ninyo dun sa last bullet, it is often used wrongly. Because it's a warning, because its use should be confined to number one, short-term projections, number two, populations with exceptional sustained surplus in resources, and also academic modeling rather than field-based planning. So later, parang I already discussed about surplus, di ba? But of course, I will repeat that part kasi yeah, we need to keep going back, especially so that we have on a monthly basis meron tayong bagong kasama, no, na reviewist. So can see the next example. This one is pressure projection. So it's still an example where you get the, no, practicing ninyo ito sa calculator siguro, no? Sa calculator. Nung araw, I teach, kasi no one is using calculator anymore. And so the step-by-step process, there is a press open parenthesis, press log, press parenthesis. Ganon, during that time, yung pre-pandemic. Kasi even in calculator, maliligaw ka, no one's using anymore. I remember one from Zamboanga, Sibugay, she's the assistant ko noon, PPDC, and she's quite old, and so she gets very nervous using calculator. And so she joins me in my hotel room. Yun lang yung gagawin namin, na even after review, like if I finish my review, like sabi whole day na yun, from 8 to 12, and then 1 to 5, and then I extend up to 7, and then dinner at 8, and then I finish at 9. And then she joins me at 9, 9 hanggang 12, calculator lang yung gagawin namin. Can you imagine that? Ay, nakuha ko sa tiyaga, no? She learned ganyan na, imagine, dapat bata tayo, alam na natin yung calculator, pero I do understand. And so, kwento ko lang, so that you will be inspired, and so on the day before, sa Pagadian, Pagadian ba yun? Saan na ba yung, yeah, I think it's in Pagadian, yung testing center. And she's from Sibugay. Dalawa, yun yung nauna before Zamboanga City. And so, nagkasakit siya and I called the husband the day before so to come over to travel to Pagadian because your wife is sick, ganun. Parang 60 plus na siya noon. And so, wala na, hindi na siya mag-exam. So, we decided na, okay, kasi yung eyes niya, so you need to take care of yourself. You need to take care of yourself kasi any moment, ano, yung kasakit kayo sa ngipin, yung eyes niyo, and then, kung ano yung mararamdaman ninyo, you really need to prepare for the board exam kasi things happen na ganito. And so, sinundo na siya ng husband niya. Gabi, dumating na siya. Okay, so we already okay, next year ka na lang, ganun, ganun. And then because of the husband, ano. And so, the following day, so everyone's wearing white shirt kasi noon pa man white shirt na talaga yung uniform ano to take the boards. And then I saw her wearing a shirt white. And so sabi ko, what happened? So, are you talaga lang suot mo ba yan para mag-travel back to Sibugay or are you uh, joining the exam? Biglang nawala yung red sa mata niya. Nawala lahat yung parang ano, hindi na siya nakakakita, parang ganun. But something happened. Parang it's a miracle. It's a miracle, no? When she was with her husband, tapos sabi niya, ah, you know what, something happened. So we prayed ganito, ganito. And then suddenly I became well. And suddenly I want to take the board exam. Was it talaga? And then you know what, she passed. She passed this exam and she's already like 2 years na lang bago mag-retire siguro or 3 years na lang parang basta 60 plus na siya. So can you imagine na may sakit talaga siya, hindi na siya nakakita, luha siya ng luha. And prayers are very powerful talaga. Ang daming kwento pa, I can tell you everything na mga miracles. So, you need to be, no, huwag tayong, don't be so, I cannot find the term, parang epal, but don't be so mayabang, ganyan. We need to learn, relearn, unlearn, so that we can relearn everything. So, yung mga ganito, calculator, pinagtiyagaan ko siya. Talagang, hindi niya ako pinapatulog. If I stay 5 days in the hotel, 5 days din siya na papaturo calculator. Bukas na naman, okay na kami in the evening. Bukas, nakalimutan na naman yan. That's, doon ko na-test how patient I was as a teacher talaga. Grabe. So, kaya ito, you need to practice this para you arrive at baka kasi magbago yung na, okay, you need to use calculator and then, ibig sabihin, may projection problems. Meron silang ibibigay na projection problems. And so, kailangan maging handa tayo. And we cannot do that like 3 days before. You will be, parang ma-mental block na kayo. Pag hindi, kala ninyo madali ito, no. It's Siyempre yung ninyo, yung calculator ninyo, so it's something that you use that for like years, decades already. So, I was just telling you na iba talaga sa board exam. So, okay, exponential method. And then, so, ayan, estimate, projection, forecast. And magkakaiba yung yung meaning niya, right? There's distinction among the three. And so, estimate, sabi niya, an estimate is an indirect measure of a present or past condition that cannot be directly measured because of lack of clear data, lack of time or cost to do the full study. So, di ba, we always say, that's just an estimate. Okay. Baka kasi definition of terms din, ano? Remember the first level of the Blooms, which is remembering. So, a blank is an indirect measure of a present or past condition. A, estimate. B, projection. Tapos kukumpletuhin lang niya yon just to include the four, if you cannot answer the first one, halimbawa, ano kayo, yeah, something like you're bothered or naantok kayo or you're having a migraine or headache, ganyan, ah, just don't ano, mag-check lang kayo sa test question and then makikita niyo, you will find the answers on the succeeding questions. Okay? For sure, meron din yung konting dinodoble pero ah, normally hindi. And if you already found an answer of estimate, so wag mo nang dodoblehin kasi for sure, ano ba, projection. So, keyword prediction. So, it's a conditional statement about the future. Conditional, di ba? You are just projections because although projections are estimates of future populations based on statistical models that extrapolate past and present trends into the future. So projections can be created through very simple or very complex calculations. And so the type of calculations used is based on the available data and is desired use of the projection. So what makes it different from or distinct from forecast? So my keyword din dito that a forecast is a judgmental statement. Conditional naman yung projection. So of what the analyst believes to be most likely to be the most likely future. So future forecast, however, include additional adjustments made to reflect assumptions of future changes, while targets express desirable future populations based on policies and goals. So you don't need to memorize, you just get the yeah, get the keywords there. So, an indirect measure. So, projection, prediction, forecast is a judgmental statement or something. So, tingnan na lang ninyo, no? Kasi siyempre, you get very overwhelmed of your readings. And so, understanding is really the best strategy here. Okay, otherwise, kahit yung apat na yan, pwede kayong ma-zero. Imagine, ano, we're discussing it tonight, and then when you get to your classroom, to your testing room, mapagbalik-baliktad mo because hindi na yan yung concentration ninyo. And ngayon pa lang, you should look for the keywords already. Tingnan niyo, alam mo naman siguro yung target, di ba? Targets in your reports, di ba? And then you express desirable future populations based on policies and goals. So, but okay, targets, of course, these are not estimates, these are not projections, these are not forecasts. So, uh, targets are aspirations, aspirational. They express what the planning authority or government wants to achieve. So, because target nga, di ba? And for instance, a city may project a population of 500,000 by 2030, for example, but target 550,000 to reflect its growth ambition under a proposed urban expansion plan. So it depends, no? So targets become the basis for aligning infrastructure, zoning, and public investment decisions. While a forecast, okay, just to make sure mas maintindihan pa natin ito, it's more, because sabi niya, it's just judgmental statement, so it's a judgment, it's more judgment-based. But it integrates both quantitative and expert opinions that ano pa ba, it requires interpretation also because in practice, forecasts tend to be the basis for official planning assumptions, especially when policy decisions are involved. So I already discussed that before or was it last night? But ngayon, makikita ninyo yung, so what are those quantitative research? Ito, parang i-characterize natin, no? So, positivistic, etc. And then, correlation analysis. So, it's easy to differentiate or to distinguish what's quantitative and qualitative. Madali lang naman, no? Um, so, okay. Ano ba ba yung dapat kong sabihin here? Hmm. So, about questionnaire, that this approach is extractive. For example, we go to a community and administer a fixed questionnaire and collect data primarily for our use as planners and or researchers. So the learning curve is long, costs are high, and participation is typically low. Ganon. So the process is highly structured because analysis happens off-site, often back in the office. So and requires heavy statistical work. So the tools used is formal questionnaires, and there are we know that they are rigid, and the interviewer controls the process and interpretation. So often a one-time engagement only with the community, and it lacks feedback mechanism. For participatory methods, they're flexible, they're inclusive. So instead of extracting data, we facilitate its co-generation with stakeholders. I mean, we work together. And so because participatory nga, di ba? And learning is quicker and more grounded. Cost is low because yeah, tools are adaptable to the local context. Also, but most importantly, participation is high, and analysis can be done on the spot. Instead of complex statistical models, we rely on pattern recognition, visual tools, and dialogue, and techniques like semi-structured interviews, mapping, and ranking exercises are used. So the decision-making process is broadened uh, because community members take part in interpreting the data and shaping the planning outcomes. And because the process is iterative, we return, then we validate and build on previous sessions. So for planners, the choice of method should match the goal. Like if the objective is precision and breadth, so survey methods may be appropriate, but if the goal is local insight, you get insights of the community or ownership and actionable planning, participatory methods are often more superior. So, okay. Yeah, I already mentioned about qualitative data. And like, this is the third day, I think, that I'm talking about quanti. But qualitative data, it comes in various forms. In fact, after pandemic, nadagdagan ulit, mas naging creative ang mga tao, especially the academic sector. They qualitative data can be done or can come in audio recordings, in transcripts of interviews, field notes, or even videos. So, but regardless of the format, the process of analysis follows a set of structured steps. So transcription, you can see there, data transcription. Of course, you are converting spoken or visual data into text, so it can be examined in detail. And it's followed by organizing and numbering the data, meaning that we are assigning identifiers to segments for easier tracking. And once we have this in place, the next step is familiarization. So you immerse yourself in the data or reading it repeatedly until key ideas and insights begin to emerge. So then we move to initial coding. That we label parts of the data with short descriptors. And for instance, if a respondent says, we're not consulted in development plans, so you might code that as exclusion or lack of participation. So you need to label it. So as more data comes in, you begin combining and renaming codes. So you can see there the next bullet to make them consistent and meaningful. Then comes recoding, meaning you are revisiting earlier labels with a more refined lens. So eventually the codes become, or the codes converge into broader themes, okay? That, for example, multiple instances of lack of consultation, so, and ignored suggestions probably, and top-down planning might be summarized under a theme like community disengagement. So this stage allows you to draw connections, surface patterns, and interpret meaning. And so in the diagram, you can see the diagram, you'll notice how data is distilled from a raw content, like audio, text, video, into words and codes. Okay, words and codes, which are later used for retrieval or measurement. But in practice, this method um, is should be deeply understood. But or we need to understand deeply people's lived experiences, so perceptions and their context. So we cannot generalize uh population, but dig deep. You need to dig deeper. And so as environmental planners, it is saying that for qualitative, we need to go beyond numbers. So we are, how do we do that, and why do we say that? It's because we are giving voice to stakeholders, and use their narratives. Okay, when we listen to them, we use their narratives to shape inclusive, grounded plans, especially in participatory settings. And so uso-uso yung participatory approach, especially by DILG and other national agencies. So, and using scale and ranking to transform qualitative to quantitative data. So, yeah, what is nominal data? So it's the simplest level, right? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, parang ganyan. And so it involves assigning codes or labels to categories without implying any order. For example, you might code barangays as 1, 2, 3, and not because barangay 1 is better than barangay 3, for example, but just a way to identify them. Gender, religion, and types of tenure arrangement also falls under this. So, um, how about ordinal data? Um, the categories are ordered or ranked, but the distances between them are not equal. So, like, I'm not sure if you know the Likert scales. Um, yes, di ba yung strongly agree sa earlier I responded to a survey about ano na yun? About gender um gender equality. So kapag ka sinabi mo bang he, ganyan, do you think yung masculine way of addressing people like he, is this um regarded as generic? Because just because, especially in law, okay? He, hindi naman pwedeng dati hindi natin ginagamit. Even in the jurisprudence or in the law itself, we always refer to he as something, it applies to both men and women. So, parang ganun. So, I answered. So, in the modern times or today, how would you regard that when you address just he, is it something generic? So how should parang may ano doon, may choices, agree, strongly agree, somewhat agree, and then in the middle, um, parang 5 yun, eh, no? So that's Likert, no? Um, so up to strongly disagree. So you can say one response ranks higher than another. So but you can't say it's twice as high. In planning surveys, this is used frequently to measure satisfaction and then priorities or perceived risks. So, and then we also have interval data where the difference between values is meaningful and consistent, but there's no true zero. What do you mean by that? Like, for example, temperature in Celsius is a classic example. In environmental planning, perceived level of service adequacy on a 0 to 10 scale can be treated as interval data, assuming equal spacing. Okay? And then at the top is ratio data. That this is the most precise level, everything internal interval data has, but with the true zero. Examples include income, travel time, distance to a facility, and this allow for full statistical analysis, including calculations of ratios, like saying one household's income is double that of another. So the key takeaway here is that by applying structure like through scales, codes, and rankings, we can convert subjective insights from communities into data that can be statistically analyzed. So, or compared or interpreted. And it helps the planners, ground their work in both people's voices and solid evidence. So, konti na lang. So other forms of data analysis, you have one, two, three, dami, no? And so they're um they're powerful because they allow us to visualize patterns, relationships, and structures that may not be obvious in raw data tables. So in environmental planning, visual tools like scatter plots, box plots, heat maps, it helps uncover structures and key variables, so you know where to focus your analysis. And then kahapon I asked Siegfried about outliers and he answered correctly. And so outliers and anomalies, which could point to data errors or to realities that need policy attention. Okay, so hypothesis for testing, especially uh, when patterns suggest causal relationships. And what's this? Parsimonious models are it aims to simplify to simplify without sacrificing um explanatory power, which is critical in policy making. And so these techniques also guide you in refining future surveys or designing experiments. For instance, a graph might reveal a sudden drop in satisfaction levels across income groups, suggesting the need for a targeted follow-up. So there are two specific techniques mentioned here, comparative analysis and the gender analysis. And so what are these? A comparative analysis involves comparing different groups, locations, or time periods. So it's essential when assessing spatial inequality, pre and post intervention changes or benchmarking across LGUs. While gender analysis, in planning, this means more than disaggregating data by sex. It entails understanding how gender roles, needs, or access to resources and decision-making power shape planning outcomes. And so this is critical in crafting inclusive policies, especially in housing, livelihood, and mobility. So, I think sandali lang. Okay. Okay. So, I think nakita na niya ito dati that so the Ishikawa, ito in the 1990 yata, 1991. And I was with the ILG, so Ishikawa, always like that. And it means fishbone diagram that I this too helps identify possible causes of a problem. So root cause, di ba? So it's structured like a fish skeleton. So I'm not sure if you've used that, but yan na yung mga sa ano, iba na is kadaanan or it's already very old tool. Uh, yung head niya being the problem and the bones representing categories of causes. So for example, in waste management, okay, because I will be conducting waste management webinar, and so the causes might include policy gaps, community behavior probably, and how to make waste management as a culture. So and how about there's in the laws are in place, but you know there are some enforcement issues and also infrastructure probably. So that's the cause and effect diagram. How about problem three? It's similar to the fishbone but more hierarchical. And why it becomes hierarchical? Because the trunk represents the core problem. Okay? Yung sa trunk niya, and roots are the causes and branches are the effects. And this is helpful in formulating project logic and theory of change. So lagi kong binabanggit yan, no? So you don't go to a specific tool without undergoing others kasi it will inform one after the other. Yeah, problem three, and then you do some objective three, and then you reach that, and then until you get to the when you want to do policy recommendations and you use the theory of change because it's yeah, it's not linear, especially when the problem is so complex. Yeah, it should be like it will consist of many patterns. So, okay, fault tree. Bakit ano yung kakaiba ng mga problem tree? Fault tree. Baka lang kasi itanong yung definition of terms. And fault tree analysis is used to trace possible faults or failures back to their root causes. It's systematic and often applied in disaster risk assessment or infrastructure planning. But it's the same as like cause and effect, tree problem. They can just choose which one is more appropriate. Of course, there's a test to that in terms of complexity or, the nature of the problem. So, matrix diagram. Meron ba? Ay, ano, matrix. Cause and effect, concentration diagrams. So, ano ba yan? Concentration na yan. Saan? But matrix diagram, hindi man nakalagay dito sa bullet, but it has a table or figure there. So matrix shows relationships between two sets of items like stakeholders and concerns or projects and funding sources. So it helps you evaluate intersections and correlations visually. The tree diagram, Yeah, I already mentioned about tree diagram. But this breaks down broad categories into finer components, and it's useful for mapping out a development plan's logical structure. Say when you are breaking a vision down into strategic goals, programs, and projects, we know that it consists of hierarchy because from the vision to the goal, to the mission, to the goals and objectives. So, okay, process decision program chart. There, okay, process decision program chart, right? So, it's a more action-oriented flow chart that anticipates possible problems and suggests countermeasures. So this aids in implementation planning. See, you are implementing pero planning pa din yung implementation mo, no? So sounds very tricky. Affinity diagram of where are you? Affinity, yan. Affinity diagram is it's good or it's recommended for early stages of data gathering where you cluster ideas or responses into meaningful categories. It's often used in participatory settings. Interrelationship diagram is when causes and effects aren't linear. This diagram helps reveal circular causality or complex linkages, like how poverty, education, and access to services influence each other. So, pwede itong theory of change, interrelationship diagram. Then, prioritization matrix is from the word itself, prioritization. So, it helps you rank alternatives based on multiple criteria. And this is especially useful when you have competing projects and limited resources. So, I think I should end there now. Okay. So just making some distinctions of this one. Pero siguro maa-answeran niyo lahat kapag if it's multiple choice questions, ganyan. And meron mga definition of terms and characterization of each. Okay, so hindi na lang ito siguro for tomorrow. So Jen, Mia, thank you for sharing, for recording it. Mag-usap na lang kayo ni Jen how you can incorporate the recording for